What is going on, guys? Welcome into the Blitz podcast. Today, we're going to be bringing you a 2024 mock draft. We're like right in the middle of the combine right now, but we kind of wanted to get this out. This is going to be our third mock draft that we're doing. This is the first one, though, that we're doing on YouTube and in podcast format. So be sure to support us. Check us out on the podcast. Check us out here. Check us out on Instagram. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that stuff. As for the mock draft, it's going to be me, my friend Mitchell, who I didn't introduce. Mitchell, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Glad to be back here for a mock draft as the combine starts to ramp up. We'll have a few scores come in as we do this, but hopefully it won't change our minds too much.
Yeah, and I think you said we've got the edges and D tackles going right now.
hmm
Yeah, we're doing this about like 5 o'clock on Thursday, and it's the first day that they're doing testing and everything. So probably going to see a little bit of movement in like some of these guys, that by the time you hear this seem like they're going to be first round locks might not even make it into our draft here because we don't know what they're going to do yet. Vice versa, like we have a guy that's in here and he has a terrible combine and he looks like a day two guy. Just going to be kind of how it is. We might be doing an episode next week talking about some combine risers, some combine fallers, and we'll kind of address that there. But as for this one, we have Mitchell doing the odds. As a Chargers fan, he's going to catch them at 5. I obviously am going to get the evens. Steelers are picking at 20. The way we each get to pick for our team. I'm a little jealous because a lot of the like interesting draft like turning points are the odds. And I was kind of excited to get those, but I will cede. So let's just hop right into it again. Be sure to check us out Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, like the video. You guys have heard this stuff if you've watched the video before. So number one, the Chicago Bears have a tough decision to make. It's been talked about at great lengths for the last God knows how long. But Mitchell gets to make that decision. And what are you going to do?
Well, very gracious of the host to allow me to make the first pick here with all the action occurring at the odds, apparently. But I'm not going to repeat what they did last year. Now's the time for them to take quarterback and reset, get what they can for Justin Fields and trade, and they are going to take Caleb Williams at first overall. The potential Patrick Mahomes / generational talent here at 1 should be able to kind of flip the franchises. They have another top 10 pick coming up, and we'll see what I do with that one.
Yeah, and like I said, this has been talked about a ton. What do you think they're gonna get for Fields? Like right now, I know that like Atlanta seems to be in on it, Pittsburgh seems to be in on it. I think Vegas should be in on it. I haven't like heard anybody say that Vegas is in on it, or like there's not really been any rumors around it. But I don't see any reason with them being the lowest picking of outside of Pittsburgh, I guess, of the teams that need quarterback heading into next year. They haven't been talked about with Fields, but what do you think?
There's a lot of teams that should be calling that aren't going to quite be in that top tier range where they're kind of looking at Knicks or Penix, something like that, who are guys that could probably win you games in the right situation, but they don't quite have the X factor. I know Fields gets a lot of slander, but he can create on his own. He can make big plays. And I don't think Chicago's fully unlocked him. So I feel like probably a second still is probably right in that range of what they're probably going to be looking for. Realistically, it might end up being like a third or fourth just because you're still going to have to pay him and pretty quickly make that decision on the 5th year option. So there's going to be a little bit of hesitancy with that.
Yeah, I think they've got to make that choice the day like a couple days after the draft ends up wrapping up. So I think this deal is going to get done sometime, I would say, within the next 2 to 3 weeks before free agency starts ramping up, because there's obviously major financial implications with trading for Justin Fields right now, and teams are going to want to have that figured out heading into that period. But yeah, Chicago, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, has a lot of decisions to make here, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see. I think it's probably going to be a second round pick that's conditional, kind of similar to the way that Aaron Rodgers' pick was when the Jets traded for him, where, you know, whether it be he plays all like 75% of the snaps, whether it be like a performance based incentive where he has to hit a certain amount of passing yards, where it would be a third that turns into a second if he hits that incentive. I don't know, maybe when it comes down to it, there's more layers than that, but I think that's going to ultimately be what it is because it's a quarterback. And, you know, if Justin Fields, we're in year 3 now, and this is the reason why the Bears are taking quarterback. But there's so much question around him that I don't think anybody's going to want to do a second just for what they've got. And I think the Bears will be fine because they don't have any leverage to do anything else. Moving on to number 2, the Washington Commanders. Oh, by the way, meant to mention this in the structure of the mock. We're doing this like not prepared. We obviously Caleb Williams. He kind of knew it was going to happen there. He controls the draft. I knew he was taking Caleb Williams, but after that, neither of us have any idea what we're going to do here. Personally, I have no idea what I'm going to do here. I know I'm going quarterback, and I like Drake May more than I do Jaden Daniels as a prospect. If I was making this pick, I'd pick Drake May. But it kind of seems like Jaden Daniels, like I really thought that this steam that pushed him into the top, because when the college football season ended, even after he won the Heisman, I was seeing him like mid first round. And I think just the lack of us doing anything has just kind of pushed him up the board. And I kind of thought that would slow down, but it seems to be pushing him further. And now I think he is going to go number 2. And I think that's going to be ultimately what I do here, taking a fellow Jaden at number 2 to the Washington Commanders. I'm not in love with it, but I think it makes a lot of sense with what he's going to be doing in that offense. I think that new ownership's going to come in, and honestly, Drake May kind of falling down on a lot of people because he didn't have the statistical production. It feels a lot like Will Levis last year.
It worries me because there hasn't been anything really to cause the fall off other than just kind of a lack of talent in comparison between years. Not quite as drastic as what Sam Howell had at the same time at North Carolina, where he went from top of the boards to completely out of the view. Nobody's considering him in the first. But Drake May still has all that arm talent without some of the physical limitations that Sam Howell had. He still has the cannon. He can still kind of create on his own. And he was producing with players that aren't up to the standards of the other 3 quarterbacks that we're going to talk about at the top, with 2 of them already being drafted, obviously. He and Tez Walker, especially, not showing out at the Senior Bowl kind of boosts my opinion of Drake May a little bit more, because Tez was a guy that was potentially in the first, and it seems a little bit like Drake was kind of dragging kind of a down roster. And from everything I've heard, he's a major locker room guy. NFL teams are going to fall in love with that type of crap. But I think he's going to do well in his interviews, and I think that might end up being the difference between him and Daniels. Because like you mentioned, Daniels had the Heisman run. We weren't really talking about it. He has a cannon. He has a good frame. He's a little light for 6'4". We'll see what he weighs in at, because he's projected like 205, 210. And if he's under 205, that's a concern with his play style. But he has a legitimate chance to go 2, because he gives you that star player capability that the NFL is kind of going towards, with more running as opposed to standing in the pocket and just drill one downfield like May can do.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird how we went from the and I think maybe this was more out of people like, the off the field stuff with Caleb, and like I guess what kind of is on the field where he was playing a little reckless, and that just kind of added fuel to the fire of the nail painting, and he cried after the game, and everybody was like, I'm not drafting that guy with any of my top 3 picks. And then the conversation was between him and May, and then I guess just again out of postseason boredom, we kind of just like, all right, well now Caleb's number 1, and now it's between May and Daniels. And I don't think that's a good sign for Drake May. Is like the fact that we were once talking about him next to Caleb, now we're talking about him with Jaden Daniels, and now we're moving him like behind Daniels. Now, the one thing that I've noticed, if you if you're looking at mock drafts every day, which if you're watching us, you probably are, Drake May doesn't make it past 3. I've seen Jaden Daniels make it to 6, make it to 8, wherever. Drake May doesn't go past 3. And I think that's something like, even like your most tapped in draft guys doing their mocks and big boards and stuff, he doesn't make it too far, whereas Daniels has a little bit more variance. But I'm going to stick with Daniels here. I don't love it, but I kind of more so,
I can see it heading this way.
I wanted to put your feet to the fire with New England at 3. This is the big pivot point in the draft for me, is 3. Like, what happens at 3? So I'm going to pass it to you, New England Patriots, on the clock at 3.
Well, I don't think the Patriots are anywhere near close to competing, and they kind of need to stack up. And there's a lot of quarterback hungry teams in this draft. And the team I'm kind of looking at the most to move up, who still has a good bit of draft capital, is the Las Vegas Raiders. Because you cannot realistically go into the season with Aiden O'Connell and be like, yeah, everything's okay. We're totally fine with this. He's okay if you need a guy in a pinch. They're going to be looking in free agency. They're going to be a team talking about Fields. But if they have a chance to jump up to 3 and get Drake May as opposed to Jaden Daniels, who there is concerns about durability just because of his play style, I think this is the time to strike. And kind of looking at the trade, PFF on their trade simulator doesn't let you go years into the future beyond next year. I think it would probably take this year's first, next year's first, and probably the following, because I threw in seconds for the next 2 years just to see what it puts it at, like a 50-50 chance. And it still isn't an accepting range for that. So I feel like if it'd be this year's first, the following first, and the next one for Oakland, well, not Oakland, Las Vegas, sorry, to move up to 3 and get their quarterback of the future and allow themselves to kind of compete in this window where they still have Devontae Adams. They might have a chance to bring back Josh Jacobs. And then they have Max Crosby on the defensive end with Antonio Pierce, who was getting that defense to outperform where they probably realistically were.
Wow. Okay. So this is exactly why I didn't want to pre-plan the mock draft because I had no idea we were going to do this. And like Vegas, while we said at the beginning, probably should be a team that's looking to make moves to upgrade their quarterback position, there are like zero talks of them actually doing that. So this is interesting. I do think it's going to be 3 firsts. If you think back to a few years ago, San Francisco going from 12 to 3 cost them 3 firsts. And this is 13 to 3, so it's pretty much going to be the same in a similarly stacked quarterback class. So, wow, okay. I mean, I like it. I think it makes a lot of sense. I agree with everything you said about Aiden O'Connell. If you're walking into a season with him as your starter, you've accepted the fact that you're going to have one of the 2 or 3 worst quarterbacks in the NFL, you know, not counting injuries and everything. Like, that's your plan. And if you want to be competitive in the NFL, you can't do that. You just can't. Like you can Antonio Pierce coach speak your way to an 8-9 record and say we've got the formula to beat Mahomes because you scored 2 defensive touchdowns all you want, but Aiden O'Connell's not getting the job done for a full 17 game season. He's just not. So, and I think
And
quite
I
frankly Drake
like
May
them as
is.
opposed to a team like the Vikings or the Broncos. So the Broncos are going to be cap stricken for a few years, and that's probably going to weigh a little bit on their quarterback. I get the Raiders have to deal with the Garoppolo contract and then dealing with Gruden, but that's not in their salary cap range. But I think they're a team that definitely needs to strike, and they have some talent to help him develop and not look like he's being thrown in the fire because the Broncos feel like they're about to move on from either Judy or Sutton in one way or another. And offensive line is okay at best. It just feels like between those teams, the Raiders would give him a better chance to succeed. And Davis is a guy who's going to go all in. Not saying that the Walmart Waltons aren't going to do the same thing, but I don't think they have the draft or money available to actually build a team around him, and they'd end up regressing May.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I like it. It just I didn't expect it. I didn't. The Raiders either for whatever, and I'm just going off of like purely vibes. Seem like they are going to go in the season with Aiden O'Connell, or I kind of felt they were a Russell Wilson team where you can get him on the cheap because while they don't have like a loaded
Out of spite.
roster, yeah, they don't have like a loaded roster, but they've got Max Crosby who's getting paid at the top of the edge market, Devontae Adams getting paid at the top of the wide receiver market. Don't know what they're going to do with Josh Jacobs. I think the whole right side of their line is impending free agents, so you got to fill that in. But this is a team that's going to be okay. Like if Drake May comes in here, it's not going to stunt his growth like he would in New England. Now, we'll wrap this up because we've actually spent a good amount of time on this. I cannot see New England going into next year with Mac Jones. So and this is February, by you saying that they've traded up, they have had to have signed Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, somebody. Because I think there is a 0% chance that Mac Jones is their starter next year. I just,
No way.
I can't see Kraft doing that again. And I hear that like he wants to get his boy at quarterback. That's what he wanted to do with Mac. He wanted to have that relationship like he had with Tom again, and I think he's
they
gonna
just
like
have
force his way into it.
they just have nothing right now, and
Oh,
they
I
need a
know.
ton of picks. They're so far away from competing that I think they can realistically just take one of the later first guys and see where it goes.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see on New England in a little bit, but for now, Arizona Cardinals. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time here. This was the pivot point at 3. I wanted to see what you're going to do, Marvin or quarterback, but this is a slam dunk for Arizona. Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't really need to talk about this. If you've listened to a mock draft at any point in like the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, you've heard the Marvin Harrison to the Cardinals analysis. So this is happening. Good for Kyler. Good for Marvin Harrison. They should be pretty good next year if they can make some moves in free agency and some nice solid drafting.
I agree with that. He's a great player to build around. They're giving Kyler Murray a weapon he deserves. Finally, one that's over 6 foot and can actually create on his own, as opposed to what he's been dealing with, aside from Ertz and McBride. But he's complete game changer. He's a can't miss guy. At floor, he's going to be like 1,000 yard receiver. Actually, at a floor, he's probably Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper's had amazing seasons here and there. He'll give you some that are right around 1,000, and he's just consistent and reliable throughout the seasons. Well, aside from injuries in most cases for him, but his floor, and his floor is great, and a guy that is going to produce for you. And Harrison has that floor, and he also has Hall of Fame as his
Yeah,
ceiling,
that
like his
that
father.
that was my thing. Is like if he's healthy for let's call it 85-90% of his career, and he stays, especially he's getting drafted to Arizona. It's not like he's going to New England and they've maybe got to figure out quarterback next year, and then they got to wait out 3 years of a quarterback contract and maybe have to draft one again. If he's here in Arizona with Kyler for I don't know 10 years, he's a gold jacket guy. Like that's how good of a prospect Marvin Harrison is, as long as he's healthy. This is like
Best receiver
yeah,
prospect
that's
since Calvin Johnson.
yeah, and like I've seen, and maybe this is just draft time hyperbole, but he's better than Calvin Johnson as a prospect, which, you know,
I wish we got to see his testing so we could compare him head to
yeah,
head.
yeah.
I wish.
All right. Next up, your Los Angeles Chargers are going to be on the clock at number 5. A lot of speculation as to what they're going to do here. You've got a lot of options. You've got Malik Neighbors. You've got Brock Bowers. You've got the top tackle on the board. You've also got a trade down option. What are you thinking here?
I am thinking a trade down,
Kind of
and
moving all over the draft board.
I am. And it's not going to be a team like the Falcons because I think the Falcons inevitably are going to end up as the Fields team because that's where he's from.
And you'd
And
have
they're
to
a
call
team
me
that's
for that,
hungry.
buddy.
I would. So I'm going to an odd number for that reason.
Of course.
And I think it's going to be the Minnesota Vikings. I think they're going to bring Kirk back on a 1 or 2 year deal, give him guaranteed money, and they're bringing in Jim Harbaugh's golden boy, the number one quarterback in this draft in his eyes, J.J. McCarthy. Because McCarthy, whether you like him or not, he's polarizing at this point, but he has talent and he has skill. And I think if you can get him behind a guy like Kirk, who understands the game in and out, he can show you what to do on a daily basis, be a leader in the locker room. He can find his way into the league and make something happen because it sounds like Justin Jefferson is about to get paid. And you're going to need that rookie contract the second that 5th year runs out on Jefferson. I think this is the right time for them to try to develop. They're going to have to trade up a little bit. I think it might cost a future first because it is moving into the top 5 still. I don't know if there'd be anything on top, whether it's a switch. I'm just going to do a forced trade for now. Maybe like a swap later in the day, future picks, later
Yeah.
picks, something in between, but at least a future first and then probably some swaps for them to come up and get McCarthy and get him to learn underneath of Kirk Cousins in this offense.
Wow. Okay. Again, another big draft day trade here. Mitchell creating his own draft board, driving me insane as the graphics department for the Blitz podcast.
I won't trade much later, don't
All
worry.
right.
It's
Okay.
just for
Okay.
quarterbacks.
Okay. Well, look, I think that McCarthy is definitely an option for Minnesota. I don't know if he's going at 5. And that may change because he throws this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But man,
It's more projection on my part. I feel like he could
and I
realistically fall to 11, but there's a few other quarterback hungry teams that you're probably going to have
yeah.
to fight off.
Yeah, and the thing, like you talked about Atlanta, like let's say Pittsburgh gets Fields, Vegas figures out their situation, and the Giants
Well,
like
they did in this situation.
yeah, like outwardly commit to Daniel Jones. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's just I don't know. It's gonna be weird. It's gonna be weird for sure to see. Like I think he's gonna be one of the most, and already is one of the most polarizing players of this class. To see where he goes, because you've got some people saying I wouldn't draft him in the first 2 rounds. You got some people saying you got Jim Harbaugh saying he's the best player in this draft. So you got to kind of weigh those two aspects of Jim Harbaugh and idiots on the internet like us.
Now, I mean, I'm not insanely high on him, but I believe deep down it's not like a what you would do mock. Well, it's a what we would do, but not a projection thing. But at the same time, I can kind of
Weighing
see
it.
it in him. Like he's a few years away, and that's the type of team that could afford to take him because they are still rebuilding, and they have Kirk Cousins can compete now with that roster, but they need a plan for the future because Kirk isn't going to be there forever. He's coming off an Achilles tear. And he's the type of guy that I feel would take full leadership to kind of pass on his wisdom and train the next guy.
Yeah, and I think that that part of it makes sense to me. Like I would not be surprised if they walk out of this draft with a quarterback and Kirk Cousins still on the roster because he's one of those guys that you can hand a young quarterback to and just especially one like JJ McCarthy that needs a lot of work. Moving on to the New York Giants, and I think they're pretty happy with the results of this first couple run here.
Yeah.
Especially if they are committed to Daniel Jones, 4 quarterbacks going off the board. However, I'm not because now I've got to turn my brain on and actually make a decision on what I want to do here because
Do you want the height or do you want the route running? Because they have a lot of small
well,
guys.
okay, I will say this: if I decide receiver, I'm taking Malik Neighbors without a thought. I think Malik Neighbors
Okay.
is the better prospect. I think I align with a lot of people that say Malik Neighbors is closer to Marvin Harrison than he is to Rome Odunze. I know that there's some, this most people have Marvin Harrison number one. Neighbors has got his guys. Odunze has got his guys, but it's a very talented wide receiver class. You're not going to lose with any of those 3 wide receivers. I just have a Neighbors preference here between him and Odunze. However, I am thinking about Joe Alt a little bit. I love Devin Neal coming out. And I think
Yeah.
him moving into guard would be a little weird because he's huge. But
So was Alt.
so is Alt, and you're not moving Andrew Thomas anywhere.
No.
But you need to have good offensive linemen. Like Daniel Jones is not going to work with the worst offensive line in the league or one of the worst offensive lines. So again, I'm thinking about it. And I'm also, trade down is weighing, but the thing is, who's moving up now? Like
Because
nobody's
the
moving up for
quarterbacks are
Knicks.
gone.
Nobody's moving
They're
up for
moving up
Penix.
4 neighbors if they're moving up.
God, I've talked to you about this. Obviously, I haven't talked to you guys about this. I want the Colts to move up for Malik Neighbors so bad. He would make so much sense in that offense. And this would be the spot if the Giants didn't have the worst wide receiver room in the NFL. And for that reason, I am going to take Malik Neighbors here at number 6.
That was a good decision. The Colts would have taken your call, though, as the person who's picking at 15
I really
to allow your golden boy.
And I don't want to talk about this hypothetical scenario. But for the Giants, Malik Neighbors is your instant wide receiver 1, is Daniel Jones' best friend immediately. I don't know what they're going to do with Saquon. Part of me says that they're going to end up letting him walk. If they don't have Saquon next year, that's probably, and like walking into the draft, probably the worst offense in the NFL, taking into account offensive line, quarterback, weapons. They've got nothing if they don't have Saquon. Like Darren Waller for 10 games, Wan'Dale Robinson, Daniel Jones, and Andrew Thomas. Like, is that okay? So you got to have somebody in Malik Neighbors who can turn, a 4-yard slant into an 80-yard touchdown. You have to have that guy because you don't have anybody else that can win, quite frankly. And you don't have anybody else that can make those kind of plays, especially if you don't have Saquon. So it's a tough decision.
Yeah, without Saquon, this is a complete lock of a pick.
Yeah, one they have to make for sure. All right, Tennessee Titans on the clock here. This should be pretty quick, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm gonna change it up.
Uh-oh.
Actually, I think the move with Callahan at coach and bringing his father in as the offensive line
What are you
coach
doing
means
again?
that they're gonna try to develop a guy on day two, not gate two. Apologies for that. That was a slip up. But with Romo Dunze here, I think they're going to see what they have in Will Levis and give him some weapons. And I think Romo Dunze is the type of guy that can transform that offense. And they need receivers because Hopkins is getting older. They have Traylon Burks, but that hasn't really worked the way they wanted it to. I think they should strike at receiver. And they do have their pick of the litter at offensive line, and it's been the worst offensive line. But I think that's why you bring in both Callahans to try to revamp it in your own ways and develop people rather than take the top guy.
Wow. Okay. Dude, this is why we do this. You're blowing my mind here. We're going to get so
I
many
mean,
clicks from this. This is awesome. Um,
I've Rome has grown on me a lot. I've seen a lot more of his just slight breakaway talent to get open enough at the right moment. He times it well. Granted, it was a lot of sideline stuff, but he has ability in the middle of the field. It's just that wasn't Penix's bread and butter there, and he can get up and get it. He has a lot of athleticism. I'm excited to see how he's going to test this weekend because he can do a ton for his draft stock.
okay. Wow. I mean, yeah, I like it. And if you think about a lot of what happened last year with Levis and DeAndre Hopkins, where he really, really leaned on him, especially early on, and you know, the I think I saw the stat the other
A
day. It
three
was
touchdown game
yeah,
or
yeah, it
something.
was 4 touchdowns for Levis. I think 3 of them went to Hopkins, and then he had 4 for the rest of the year after that. So this is definitely a receiver room that needs work, whether Hopkins is back or not. You still have Traylon Burks there. You move him down a peg, let him kind of be more of a not a gadget guy per se, but a guy that you manufacture shorter touches for, as opposed to having him be an X receiver and telling him to go win. Romo Dunze can
Yeah.
be your X receiver. You can tell him to go win. Atlanta Falcons at number 8. I thought that I was like kind of like being like, I gotcha by taking Daniels at
No,
2
not
there,
quite.
and this is certainly one of the positions I've been put in.
Honestly, you
Pause.
did what I was really hoping for. But I was like, man, I can't see anybody trading up to 3 from the 10s for Jaden Daniels. But then Drake May fell to 3, and I was like, all right, time to make it
Well,
happen
because
because I wasn't going to do it before.
I don't. I'm definitely not drafting with other teams in mind. But if I took May at 2, Harrison at 3, then the
I would have
draft
gone
just.
Harrison at
I
3.
know. Then the draft just gets weird, and I hate that. By the way, I hate the idea of the Patriots not having a quarterback going in. Like, I love Marvin Harrison, but like everybody's worried about ruining a quarterback. What if you ruin Marvin Harrison? I don't know. What's the difference? Um, but Atlanta is pissed about what has just happened because they need quarterback. 4 of those are gone, and the thing
Receiver.
they need receiver. 3 of those are gone. Um, and I feel like you'd kind of be wasting an opportunity not to be taking calls here from somebody. I don't know who you're taking calls from. Looking down the board here.
Who needs tackle desperately? Because that's the team that's got to move up.
So
I mean,
I
you could
see the
get the Jets
Jets at
maybe, but
10.
I don't think they're worried
I mean,
in that situation.
if Joe Alt is still here, where he's like, in my opinion, he's a huge sure thing at tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I like that for the Jets. Looking a little bit further down the board, maybe the Chargers try and move back up.
Or the Pats try to rebuild the O line, move back up,
Yeah.
slightly trade, build kind of a foundational offensive line. That's
Selfishly,
the
Pittsburgh could scale the draft a little bit to go get Alt. I don't think that's
yeah,
going to happen. That's a little far for
that's a
them to go.
hefty jump for a
I
tackle.
think I'm going to go with the Jets because,
Easier for you.
well, yeah, that, and I think ultimately, they have Aaron Rodgers. They're going to throw the football, but this offense is predicated around the running game. And if Alt is like in reach, I don't think the Jets ever thought like how many mock drafts, and maybe this ends up happening, but like how many situations are the Jets going to have where Alt is in like reachable distance, like going up to 8. I guess like going to 6 isn't crazy, but very rarely would the Jets like be in position to go get the number one tackle in this class in Joe Alt. So I think they're going to do that for the sake of time. Let's just say they throw him like a third or a second,
Yeah,
um,
that's
whatever,
fine.
and yeah, we're going to go up, and Jets are going to go get Joe Alt. I think this is a slam dunk, especially if it's just a third or a second to guarantee yourself what I again think is going to be. I think he's got like all pro in 3 to 4 years type caliber of talent to him. I think he also provides easily the safest floor in this class of any tackle. He's well rounded. It's not like he's got a huge hole in one spot like an Olu Fashanu, who I do like a good bit, but really lacks in the run department, really struggles against power. Joe Alt really doesn't have any weaknesses to me. And getting that guy only at 8, I think that's great for the Jets.
Yeah. I think that's good. I would kind of look at the Jets trying to get Bowers at 10 because
I've
they
thought
need
about it.
another offensive weapon too. And there's a lot of good tackles that are going to fall today too, and they can kind of mix and match as needed to try to make that team better. And on this next one for the Bears, I'm between two people, and based on what you said on this last one, I'm kind of worried what you're going to think about one. So I'm either thinking an edge. I'm leaning Latu because Latu's been testing better than I expected today. He's not quite got that athleticism knock that I thought he was going to have. And I love Olu Fashanu because he can be a bookend pass blocking left tackle or right tackle because he's played a little bit of both for your franchise quarterback in Caleb Williams. And there are guys on day 2 that they can get to be more of those offensive weapons or be in the trenches. There's a lot of depth at receiver. There's a lot of depth on the interior of the defensive line to help them rebuild that. And I just kind of want to bounce it off you. Which one do you value a little more at
So
this position of time?
between Latu or Olu, my two choices
Yes.
here. I
Because I
would,
know it's not technically a need for them because they're okay, but it's a potential bookend tackle
yeah, and
that
you'd
you can
have
just
that
lock it in.
pair. Well, so okay, so are you moving Braxton Jones in? Because like I like
I
Braxton Jones,
feel like he could.
but I understand the
I
thought
feel
of like he may not have the highest ceiling. You've got
he
Darnell Wright on the
doesn't.
other side.
Like Braxton is a solid starter in the league. They've been they never moved off of Tevin Jenkins, even though they talked about it all the
Mm-mm.
time.
He's still there. I mean
Yeah,
he's inside, but yeah.
I feel like Jones could be at guard because he's okay and all, but he's definitely not a guy that you're like, yeah, I no matter what, he's got to be my left tackle. And I think that if you have Wright and Fashanu, you're setting up Williams great.
Yeah, and like you said, with receiver options, this is a pretty deep receiver class. You can go address wide receiver too, and this is also a pretty deep free agent wide receiver class as well. So they could
And they
address it
have a ton
there,
of cap,
and they're going to have a ton of cap. They're also going to have an
but there's
extra
not
second
a lot
round
of
pick
great
from Fields.
tackles, not a
Yeah,
great of
I
not a
mean,
great of guards. There's a few centers that are okay and serviceable. I feel like I'm leaning towards kicking Jones inside and giving him Fashanu.
okay, okay, I can get with that.
All right.
I can get with that. Olu at number 9. That's another one. I
Because
don't.
he's definitively the best pass blocking tackle in this. Alt's great, but he's a notch below in pass blocking while Fashanu lacks in run blocking.
I don't think you have made like a single. I mean, I guess Odunze is kind of normal and Caleb Williams, but you've made like a lot of like outside the box moves here. I haven't seen Olu to Chicago a whole lot. I haven't seen tackle to Chicago really since like the early part of
I think
early part of the regular
it's a
season.
little underrated, I think, because Jones has been solid. He hasn't been all Pro Bowl level, anything like that. He's not a guy that you're like, we we can lock him in long term. He can be serviceable, but he's not that next level guy. And I think it's time to set in on Caleb and protecting Caleb and letting him create and not be under duress constantly when he's passing.
Yeah, and another thing here for that pick for Chicago, and then we'll move on to Atlanta at 10. I think if all the receivers are off the board, I think they're going to start taking calls. You've already got Caleb. This is your second first
Mm-hmm.
round pick. You can't grab that like really great receiver in Odunze or Neighbors at 9. I think they're going to be taking calls to move out of that spot. So that way, maybe they can move down. I don't, again, with no McCarthy on the board, I don't know who's moving up that far, but you could maybe grab some picks next year. So that way you kind of have that thing like how Philly had it for a few years where they've always got an extra draft pick in every draft and you just keep moving it into the future. And that, you can stack talent pretty easily that way. But I still think Olu makes sense. I think he's a fantastic player, and you're setting up Caleb Williams really nicely in the Bears, really nicely. Number 10, Atlanta Falcons. They obviously moved down just a few minutes ago. I was eyeing edge for them with the wide receivers off the board. Not going to take Brock Bowers, guys. I know that was probably the common thought here.
Pitts plus Bowers.
To move Kyle Pitts to the bench where he belongs because he's not a productive player, and go get Brock Bowers. I think I'm going to go Jared Verse here at number 10. I remember the Falcons were kind of in on him last year when they thought he was going to come out last year, and then he didn't.
Exact same pick they're at this year.
And yeah, and hey, but they moved out of this one. But they still need edge help. That I think. Well, in this crazy universe, I guess, yeah, if they go get Fields, you'd like to stack up the wide receiver room, but again, we talked about it. Free agent class is good. Second round is good, which you may not have. Well, no, because they've got that. They might have the extra pick from Calvin Ridley, depending on what the Jaguars do. So they could kind of replace that pick that they're going to lose by trading for Fields with that Calvin Ridley pick and maybe get a receiver there. But they've been investing kind of heavily, but also like weirdly not enough in their front seven over these last few years. They've needed like a true number one edge. And I think he's the kind of guy that can be that. I think as of right now, he's my number one edge.
The one thing I think about is I think Turner is from Georgia, and Atlanta kind of highly values homegrown. Oddly enough, because I know during the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, they put a peach next to people from Georgia in the Atlanta scouting reports, apparently, which is a weird thing to scout. But Georgia is kind of a factory of players.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, got peaches all over the place. But yeah, I still think wait, where did Verse transfer from? Because didn't he transfer into Florida State?
Buffalo, I think, or somewhere from New York.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I'm going to stick with Verse. I think Turner's going to be he's going to have a bit of a weird, like, draft process. Yeah. A little bit.
He has a 6'11" wingspan, though.
Yeah.
After they measured it today. Oh. Absurd.
All right. Jared Verse, number 10. Put your Chargers back on the clock at number 11. What are we doing?
Well, I am a little bit torn because right tackle is not great for us, and Fuaga's kind of sitting there. We need some interior guys and edge rushers, depending on what we do, depending on who we cut, because Bosa and Mack, one of them's got to go. We still need receiver, but receiver would be a reach. We could always trade back, but I'm tired of trading back in this right now. So I'm going to go with good old Brock Bowers. He can block for you. He can get wide open in the middle of the field. He's a great player. He can block for the run game that Jim Harbaugh wants to establish and Greg Roman definitely wants to establish. And it can kind of be more of that Vernon Davis, Mark Andrews type of presence for Roman as he implements his offense here in LA.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of the most, not chalk picks, especially after the trade back. But I think if the Chargers want Brock Bowers and they decide we're going to take Brock Bowers, you have to trade down. Not because, like, I'm scared of what happened with Kyle Pitts, but just, you look at the
contract
value,
situation's horrible.
With tight ends, it's just not worth it to take a tight end that high, even if you're going to use him as, like, a power slot receiver. Like, because I think that's ultimately what the Chargers are going to do. I don't think it's, like, a foregone conclusion that they don't bring back Gerald Everett, as well as drafting Brock Bowers, depending on what his market is, just so they can have multiple guys. They've still got Parham under contract as well, who is huge and can be an actual tight end. But I think this is the pick, especially after trading down, and I think this is ultimately going to be the guy that they want at 5. They just better trade down before they do so. Denver.
I don't know. I don't know if we'd take him there because we have a lot of Ravens guys there, and they value worth of position and
Yeah,
contract value.
yeah. But then like the flip side, like if Neighbors is sitting there, the flip side of that is Roman historically, not that
Wouldn't
he's
do it.
making all of the draft decisions, but his offense is not predicated around having talented
It
receivers.
might be alter somebody in that case then.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I thought you were going to do. I thought if you didn't trade down and you were like going to stick, I thought you'd take all. All right, Denver. Denver's pissed too. I'm pissed because I just keep seem to be getting all the teams that don't really have a whole lot available for them. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Bo Nix at 12. I don't love it though. Um, and
I'm
if
not
you're
that fond of it either.
not taking quarterback, Denver is kind of a best player available team. Like we thought just a mere 2 years ago that they were a quarterback away from being like an AFC championship contender. That quarterback sucked, and now they're like they need everything except for
And that
a
quarterback's going
number
to
one
take a
corner.
vet min somewhere else.
Yep.
They could use edge. They're a little light there, and they
But
haven't
what I'm
touched the other
they're
team.
light everywhere.
Corner,
They
corner
need
there, not safety, I
maybe don't
guess.
need
Receiver
tackles.
probably
Don't need
still.
tackles because they got McGlinchey and Garrett Bowles. That's probably fine. They could draft a receiver here.
Yeah,
They need
they need
everything.
center.
IDL edge. They could take they could. I don't know. They could use a number two corner. You're not taking a safety this high, but I hate this.
It's a stinky pick, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of people trying to trade up into this. Is the only thing.
And
Like
I
it's
think
not desirable.
as a result, I'm gonna be a coward and I'm gonna take Bo Nix. Look,
Oh,
look, Bo Nix is fine. He's fine, but he's 24, and it's going to be kind of hard to get him where you need to be in a division that now has Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and just Drake May. But you can't start Jarrett Stidham next year. In
and you
our
don't
in
have
our
Russ.
hypothetical world that we've just kind of talked ourselves through, Russell Wilson is not an option for you, unfortunately. Kirk Cousins has been re-signed. Justin Fields has been traded. You're looking at Ryan Tannehill. You wanna kick the tires on that? Help yourself.
Yeah,
But they have
and
to
the
have a
Waltons
starter.
are quarterback hungry. They will not settle for not leaving the draft with a quarterback.
Yeah, and I think I know you're lingering with New England at 13. If they didn't pick Bo Nix, they may not be able to take one. And like who knows what happens with Penix? I don't know how his medicals are going to look. Like his previous injury history might push him down boards a little bit. I don't think he's going to be a first round player, but who knows if he's available at your second round pick. And then now you're looking at like Spencer Rattler, which look, I'm going to be
Blech.
totally honest with you here. If Spencer Rattler's there, like your third or fourth round pick or like a compensatory pick, even after you took Bo Nix, take him. Take him. You got
You're
to figure
calling
this
about
thing out.
Sam Howell in Washington at that point.
That's another thing. I meant to bring that up when I was picking Washington. I think that's an option for Denver, but I don't think that ownership group is going to accept trading for Sam Howell as our quarterback solution after we just ran Russell Wilson down, and they're going to have to pay him $100 million. So, Bo Nix is the pick.
I'd
Patriots are the
agree
pick.
with that. All right, Patriots. I mentioned it earlier. I think they want to rebuild through the trenches, and we still have a great tackle left in Talise Fuaga. He is a mauler. He's a technician. He is great. He's going to help them build through the trenches, and it's just setting a new culture for them with Gerard Mayo and Power there. And they have a lot of needs. Why not start at one of the more valuable positions at tackle?
Yeah, I mean, I like that as well. Fuaga, again, not one that you see very often because New England usually isn't picking here, but I think that's a good fit. Trent Brown is an impending free agent. Michael Mwenu is an impending free agent. They need everything everywhere. So this is why you trade down so you can make picks like this. You've just got to start accumulating talent on the offensive end. I think, I know this has been like one of the, what if they go get T. Higgins or the Do it. You have to. You cannot, like, whoever's your quarterback next year, you cannot push them into that. Sam Howell's another, or the Patriots are another team could be interested in Sam Howell. Because
Or Ryan
you,
Tannehill.
like, I think they should, because they don't really have a quarterback clock anymore. Like, you're not, like, worrying about contracts because I think you've given up on Mac Jones. You go get Sam Howell. If he's good, great. We don't have to draft a quarterback next year. If he's not, trade him again, draft a quarterback. Done and done. I think that's a solid route for them to take. But you got to take a tackle to get him protected. And dear God, please acquire receiver help. Please.
Somewhere.
New Orleans Saints, number 14. They need
I
trenches.
don't mind the spot for you.
Yeah, they need trenches both ways. You've got pretty much everybody. I don't think they're going to take a tackle. I know Ramchick's got some retirement might be looming for him. Injuries stacking up over the years.
But you have Cam Jordan looming too.
Yeah, you got Cam Jordan, who's definitely taken a step back. You really don't have anything on the defensive line. And quite frankly, you don't have anything on the offensive line either, except for Ramchick. I don't think they're going to completely give up on Penning yet. I think this time next year we'll be saying that they have. So for that reason, I think I'm going to stick on the defensive side. And I don't think Latu's their kind of player. Like, he just doesn't seem like a Saint to me.
You thinking Turner?
I'm thinking between Turner
and Murphy.
The other guy I'm looking at is Byron Murphy, who didn't exactly test fantastically today.
But he's got great tape.
Oh, yeah. He's got fantastic tape.
His pro days will probably be better and fix it a little, I think. Yeah,
but they've been so pro traits through, their draft. I mean, hell, they've been working really hard to fix this edge room. It's just not working. They drafted Isaiah Foskey in the second round last year. They drafted Brian Bresee in the first round last year. They drafted Peyton Turner, I believe, in 21 or 22.
For God knows why. He's horrible.
And he's not even getting snaps anymore. So you gotta, I guess you just gotta kind of keep hammering away at this thing. I don't think quarterback's an option for them either, especially with all of the guys off the board here.
Not with Penix as your top option at 14.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna go Dallas Turner.
I don't mind that.
Get your Cam Jordan replacement and again, traits guy. Really good athlete, really long wingspan. This is what they've targeted, but you gotta start somewhere. They're gonna go with Dallas. Indianapolis Colts.
Indianapolis Colts. There's a lot of things they need. Like, they need receiver desperately, they need cornerbacks desperately, and they need interior because Buckner kind of reaching the end of the contract. I think they'll re-sign him and try to make things work for him in the future.
I don't think that's a round one need. I think it's a need. I don't think it's a round one.
This is an athlete factory. They don't look at guys if they're not elite testers. And the guy that I think is going to be the most elite tester out of the cornerback group is Quinyon Mitchell.
Okay.
Apparently, he can put up over 20 reps of 225. He's projecting to run in the 4.3s. And he can jump out of the gym, probably pushing 40 inches for the vertical, if not higher, probably higher. I really like him. Wiggins is a great guy, too. Arnold's great, probably not as athletic as the other two. But I think Quinyon is just going to meet their standards for athleticism and kind of match the scheme that they want to run a little better. Because he has shown he can be versatile.
No Cooper DeJean mention for the athletes, huh?
He's not able to test yet. That's what I'm worried about. Because he is a great athlete. He's a multi-sport athlete. He's still recovering from surgery. He should be able to go to his pro day, but I think they're going to look at combine a little more.
He's going to have a weird process, I think, just because of the injury stuff. And the elephant in the room is his ethnicity.
Caucasian.
Yeah. For those that didn't know. He's going to make history as the first white corner drafted in the first round since, just purely guessing here, Ronald Reagan administration.
Jason Sehorn in the early 2000s.
Was he a first round pick?
Oh yeah, I don't think he was a first. It's been a while.
I mean, those types have to work their way through the practice squad and such. Like those
You
guys,
got to earn it. Show the
yeah,
grit.
you've really got to earn it if you're running out there saying I'm going to play corner. They're laughing at you, buddy. All right, Quinyon Mitchell at 15 to the Colts puts me on the clock with the Seattle Seahawks at 16. We just got word through the Twitter.com X, sorry, that Geno Smith will be under contract for the entirety of the 2024 season, so he's locked in at quarterback there. I'm kind of looking around edge a little bit. Like this could be a Latu spot for sure. I don't know
Big
though.
fundamental guy.
Yeah, I don't
Nearby
know.
where he's from.
True. They got the geographical part of it. I don't think that offensive line is out of play here, especially on the interior. I think they could definitely use, and when I say that, I mean pretty much solely Jackson Powers Johnson. Looks like he's going to be the only like set at the interior guy. I know there's a lot of tackles that are some projected as guards.
This guy's sneaking in at the end, but JPJ is the only guy really flirting with top 20.
Yeah. I think I might pull the trigger on that. I kind of like it. It's not sexy, but they've done so much sexy throughout the last 2 years drafting
Yeah. They got to take your vitamins.
JSN, corner, you know, all these guys that have been great, don't get me wrong, but you got to take your vitamins. You got to eat your vegetables here. So we're going to go Jackson Powers Johnson at 16, which puts you on the clock with the Jags at 17.
Yeah, I like that pick. It wasn't sexy, but JPJ is sexy. That is a stout man right there that you want on the interior of your offensive line. And for the Jags here, there's a lot of routes they can go because Trayvon Walker hadn't really panned out. I think they end up getting something done with Josh Allen. They're probably going to throw him a bag, if not do a franchise tag to try to make this work because they are bare there. But they are also bare at corner. And there's a few corners I'm thinking about, and I think I'm going to pull the trigger on it. I think the Cooper DeJean time has come.
Okay.
Because they kind of need some versatility there because he can play in the slot. He's probably a little more strict in the slot. He can play a little bit of safety. They need some tacklers at the line. He just provides a certain versatility that the other two don't.
Yeah, I think the Jags are kind of a weird team to draft for because, like, you could look at a lot of different positions and say, okay, they could take this, but then you've got, like, some reasons why they would. Like, at corner, I know you need two, but, like, okay, you got Tyson Campbell there. You've got some other prospects. Maybe that's a day two need. Tackle, you just drafted Anton Harrison. You could definitely upgrade over Cam Robinson, but maybe that's a day two need. Wide receiver, you got Christian Kirk. You might have Calvin Ridley. Maybe that's day two, but like there's no like outstanding. Jackson Powers Johnson would have been a really nice pick here if he wasn't already gone off the board. But okay.
I was probably leaning Latham if I didn't go DeJean, just so they could kind of throw out Robinson finally after trying to make it work for so many years and him just never quite living up to what they thought he'd be.
Yeah. Okay.
That was my other one.
All right. Cooper DeJean off the board, making history for us. Cincinnati.
A white boy can jump.
Cincinnati on the clock at 18. Another kind of strange team where, like, ideally I just say they're going to take Brock Bowers, but that's probably not going to happen because he's probably not there. And then after that, you're like, there's nothing really enticing. Like, there's nothing that feels right. Like, I'm looking at Byron Murphy. He's still here, which is, might be considered a little bit of a slip for him. And is going to be kind of
Johnny.
a need. Yeah, DJ Reader is an impending free agent for them. Has been a huge impact for them, and they can't give the tag to him because it's going to T. Higgins. So, and he's a guy that has had his injury problems throughout the years. I don't know if they're going to give him a long-term deal because of that, and they may just straight up lose him. You took Miles Murphy last year, but he definitely projects as, while he's bigger, still more of an edge. He's your long-term, like, Sam Hubbard contingency plan to go alongside Trey Hendrickson. And I'm kind of talking myself into Byron Murphy here because DJ Reader's been so impactful for them for the last few years when he's healthy, that if they don't have a guy like that, you might see some really serious drop off in their defensive numbers. DJ Reader's not, one of those huge names, especially on the interior, but he's got that huge impact for them.
I do think it's between him and Latham, though,
Tackle,
because
yeah.
they're still working at this offensive line. They're still chipping away at it, and I think Latham's going to test off the charts for strength and stuff like that, and I think it might get him moved up in this draft.
Former
So
defensive
it's
end,
between him and Murphy.
Former defensive end, J.C. Latham.
He's nasty. That's a big boy. I wouldn't want to mess with him in the trenches. So I'm definitely between him and Murphy there. And it's just kind of your pick of the litter. Which do you think is more pertinent to that team? Because they have been fighting for offensive line for so long. And whether or not you think they can get something done with Reader is the bigger part.
Yeah. I just honestly, especially, it seems like they're just going to give this T. Higgins thing the tag, and then after this year, just call it. But you've got the Burrow contract on the books. You've also are going to have the Jamar Chase contract. You've already got Orlando Brown. You've got Trey Hendrickson
so
on a bigger deal. Do you want the
cheap tackle? The 5th year.
So the thing is, they obviously have their second-round pick. And this question to me then becomes, would you rather have Tavondre Sweat, who
big boy who can clog
is
up
going
the middle,
to clog up the middle, but is not going to do anything rushing the passer, which Byron Murphy is kind of like
he's got some decent moves. He's
for that
size,
fast. But yeah, for that size, I suppose. But Byron Murphy, kind of your antithesis of that, where he is much better as a pocket pusher, as a guy that's going to try and get to the quarterback, not as strong in the run game. Or in the second round, would you rather take Patrick Paul?
If he's there, because you're taking a risk at that point.
Yeah,
because they'll be at
50
with this math. Right around 50, I think.
50, yep. So Patrick Paul,
Jordan Morgan,
all of the small tackles. Yeah, Jordan Morgan.
Yeah. Swing guys.
How do you say it? DJ. Amagaji.
How far down?
Big dude from Yale. I've seen.
I
think it's Amagaji.
No, Barton, Sumatai. He might go in first.
I think
Amagaji.
He's going
Kingsley,
to be one of the first guys.
Sumatai. He's gonna fly up from testing. I think Morgan might fall. I don't think he'll be a great tester. You could get Paul, maybe.
Yeah, because from here on, you've already got 3 off the board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
It's a good tackle
7,
class, though.
Yeah,
so
7,
there is depth.
8, 9.
I just worry that they're gonna fly because people love tackle, and some of those guys are tweeners that they're still listing at tackles. So
I'm taking Byron Murphy. I'm taking Byron Murphy.
I was fine with either. It was a good pick either way, I think.
Yeah, I think, look, I know that because he's gotten hurt, everybody's like, please invest in the offensive line, Cincinnati Bengals. But they've done that. And it's not like they're terrible. Like, you know how many teams have 5 good offensive line starters? 0. So, if you're expecting that to happen, it's not going to. And if you're, complaining because your one right tackle sucks, welcome to the NFL, dude. Your offensive line is not going to be perfect. You're going to have holes. That's just how it is. So, and I get that you may want to try and fix that, but it's just not going to happen. Give up.
There's always a cheap option in free agency, too.
Yes, there always is.
You can always explore that.
And hell, you have a guy, I don't think he's going to come back. You have a guy in Jonah Williams who, if you really are like, man, we really need a tackle, I'm sure if you give him enough money, he will play for you guys again. So that's also on the board. On the clock, though, are the Los Angeles Rams at 19.
Man, this is about the most loaded I've ever seen it at 19. Because you got both of those top corners in Arnold and Wiggins. You got Latu still. You got Latham still. You got Johnny Newton still. They could legitimately use any one of them. Because even though they outperformed what anybody thought they were going to do last year, they still have holes. You're not content with any of them. But I'm going to go low moving cost here because I love Latu, and I think they just need more of a long-term solution at edge because they got a lot out of Byron Young last year. I didn't think he'd be as good as he was. They got Kobe Turner playing great, but they're more situational guys. And I think Latu can kind of play the pass and the run well. He's a technician. And if you get a good rotation building, he's a great guy to have. It's just a matter of his medicals with him on how high he can go because he's testing a little better than anybody would have thought right now.
Yeah, and I think the Rams are one of those teams. I'm also been widely covered. This is their first round pick since Jared Goff.
Yeah,
And
at
this is
one.
your first chance. Yeah, and this is your first chance to get one of those like elite prospects. Like they've had guy, and obviously they've traded for Jalen Ramsey's and had Cooper Cups develop, but usually they are not. They don't have these kinds of players available to them, especially at this age. And they really, if medicals weren't a thing, if this was Madden and we turn injuries off, this player's not available to them anyway. Because I think if medicals weren't an issue, I think Latu's the first edge off the board. His tape's so good. His pass rushing arsenal is so good. You can kind of skip over the athleticism stuff a little bit. And he's the best edge in this class. But you have to weigh that in. And the Rams have not been shy about taking guys that have injury problems. Puka Nacua fell to the 5th round last year because he was often injured at BYU. These kinds of players, the Rams have been willing to take risks on. And if it pays off, you have a really good defensive line all of a sudden. You have like a true strength, which one of our worst takes of all last offseason was having them at 31 and being like, does anybody know who any of these guys are that aren't Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, or Aaron Donald? Missed the mark on that a little bit. As did a lot of people. Not like it's not just us. As did a lot of people. A lot of people didn't think the Rams were going to be as good as they were. McVay's a fantastic coach. That staff that they've got there is great. And I think Latu is a great pick for him and develop him. And as long as he's healthy, I think it's a strength for the first time in a little bit.
I do think it's a steal here at 19 for them to have him fall to them. Any of those big three of the edge rushers, I think they'd be happy with. Honestly, any of the guys I mentioned, they'd be happy. Like, yeah, we got a guy here. They've got the easiest spot. It's just when it gets clustered like this, it's who do they have the highest on their board? Because they'll be happy with any of them.
And I think edge, if I'm not mistaken, in my mind,
falls off after that.
It's a 3-man class, like a 3-man first round class. It's Latu, Turner, and Verse. And I'm not saying that they can't get one of those tier 2 guys later on, but you're getting that last guy all the way down.
Traits, yeah, and athleticism.
Moving forward here, Pittsburgh Steelers, 6-time champions. Have to throw that in to make myself feel better about the current state of this team. Picking here at 20, you got two choices here. You got tackle or corner. And the way that tackles have come off the board and the way that corners, quite frankly, haven't, I like Terry and Arnold.
Not a lot of great corners, though.
I like Terry and Arnold a lot.
First and second.
But I don't think he fits what we are going to want in a corner. Like,
does Nate?
Kind of. What is Nate's? He looks really slight, but
how large are you? I don't think
size,
he's that
buddy.
Small.
Why can't I find
6'2", 185.
Arnold is what? We're really good at this, by the way.
And then Arnold is 6 foot flat, but weighs more. Wiggins is slight in stature, but he's tall.
But Arnold's so good, dude. Like, Arnold should not be here at 20.
He's good. I really wanted him a few picks ago, too, and I was like, I just feel like traitsy guys are more bulky's thing with the gene. Like, if he's an athlete, that was where I was thinking.
You know what, man? Fuck it. He'll figure it out. I'm doing it. Terry Arnold at 20. Like, he's too good of a player to pass on at 20, especially at a really big position of need where, you've got Joey Porter, and that's great, but you're probably going to lose Patrick Peterson. Good. You're probably going to lose Levi Wallace. Good. Corey Trice, love him to death. Probably not going to make it through training camp. And Darius Rush, like, I'm seeing, like, I saw, like, and I'm sure anybody,
I loved him last offseason.
Yeah, I did too. But, like, the Facebook, like, Steelers Nation or, like, whatever team nation that's like, Steelers look to form cornerback big three with Joey Porter, Corey Trice, and Darius Rush. And I'm like, dude, Darius Rush got cut as a rookie. So, really? Okay. And real quickly, my rationale for not taking tackle. Look, I hate Dan Moore as much as the next guy, but we fucking love him for no reason. So he's starting next year. We'll sit a rookie tackle to start Dan Moore, despite for 3 consecutive years, I'm pretty sure he's allowed the highest pass rush win rate in the NFL. But he's still starting.
I think so.
Oh, who cares? If you guys don't care, why should I care? Taron Arnold, number 20.
I'm shocked that wasn't the Penix pick there.
Yeah. Second round.
Well.
We're spin the block.
All right, so we're at the Miami Dolphins here. Primary needs, tight end, offensive line, probably corner now that they don't have Howard and they just have Ramsey.
Sneaky need. Who's old.
Yes, and they could need some rotational pass rushing, but I'm not that concerned about that. They'll find a way to get Wilkins back. They're probably going to lose Van Ginkel, but situational pass rusher. You can find that later in the draft. So I'm kind of torn here between offensive line and corner, but I'm going to make this quick. I'm going to go Nate Wiggins because he fell to them and they need some contingency plan because Ramsey is in his 30s. He's still playing at an elite level, but it's slowly starting to back off at this point. And you're going to need as much depth as you can get at that position with how these contracts are starting to stack up. They're not going to be able to address it well in free agency later on.
Yeah, this is a very obvious plan for the future pick. I mean, you cut Xavier Howard. Jalen Ramsey is, I believe, just turned 30 this season, if not 31, somewhere around there. Doesn't have a whole lot of time left of being a number 1 corner in the NFL is my point here. And they don't have a whole lot after that. At least at offensive line, you've got some guys kind of in-house where you can make something shake there. And they've got an offense that can patch up the holes of some offensive linemen. We've seen that over the past few years. So... And I think
I
they'll
do
also
think
like Jonah Williams.
This next team is punching the table too.
Oh yeah,
because of our pick.
They are. They definitely are. And that next team is the Philadelphia Eagles. The most obvious screaming need is corner, which is so stupid because they're 2 years removed from having arguably the best duo in the league. That's what happens when that duo's 28.
Bradbury in a contract year is next level. It's a different man.
Oh yeah, dude, he's special. But we know what they've done. You know the formula for the Eagles. You draft in the trenches. And there's some really, really, really nice trench players here still available. I'm talking about, I think we may have goofed.
A lot of good tackles.
We may have goofed a tad if we're doing this predictively. Because there's absolutely no way that J.C. Latham, Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton, and Troy Fontenot should all be available at 22.
I think the last two. Actually, I think Mims and Fontenot are less likely. They'll probably be 25.
Still, those four, all 4 of them still being here at 22. I'm very, very, very intrigued by Tyler Guyton. With the way that they develop tackles.
And Lane Johnson probably looming on retirement here.
Mm-hmm. You probably can sit Guyton for a year, which is probably good. He's going to test, we could be walking out of this weekend with him as a top 16 lock. That's a world that we could be living in a week from now. Because he is going to test out of the gym.
Yes.
Probably the best athlete at tackle in this class.
But I don't want you to hear why is J.C. Latham and Amarius Mims still here when you take Tyler Guyton at 22. Even though it is pretty rational because that's their type of contingency plan. They want to build for the future and build in the trenches. And he is a guy that needs some time, but could be elite.
All right. I'll take Latham. Because I do like Latham. I do like Latham.
He's still a good athlete, too.
Yeah. You're not picking a low ceiling guy here in Latham. It just Latham feels like he's, and we're not drafting for other teams here, like we are, but we're not thinking about it. Latham just feels like a guy that should be starting in year 1. Yeah. And I don't feel like this may be the best situation for him, but I think.
And he's too big for a guard, I think, in my opinion. They're not going to do a kick-in type of situation.
And, I mean, they really don't have any room. Jurgens starting at right guard right now?
I mean, if Kelsey
'Cause-
retires, he's probably going to center
yeah, but I
because
feel
that's
like that
what
would have
he
happened
was
already if he
planned
was
to.
retiring. Yeah,
I mean,
I
Schefter
don't
said
know,
it, so
but
apparently it's true.
oh yeah, okay. All right, well we're gonna take Latham here, and that'll put you up with the Houston Texans at 23. This is a team that I think can go in a lot of different directions, and I'm very intrigued to see what you do.
Yeah, they're probably going to lose a few guys on the defensive line. That's going to hurt. They're probably going to lose Steven Nelson, so corner's probably going to be an issue too across from Stingley. I feel like they could use offensive line because didn't they trade for Josh Jones and then he got hurt like immediately
That
too?
sounds right, and I think he's an impending free agent anyway.
So I am going to be between for the interior because I do like Johnny Newton because D'Amico, he's going to want some guys on that
He
line.
feels like a Texan for
And
some reason. I can't
yeah,
explain it.
and then I feel kind of torn between like Mims or somebody like that range. I don't know if they're going to be the team to take Guyton
No,
because
I don't
they're
think so.
kind of bringing in that Shanahan scheme. They're not looking for athletes; they're looking for guys who can play their role.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
I agree.
Newton's probably the guy I'm going with here because
Yeah.
he was the consensus top interior guy coming into the year, and then people started watching Murphy tape and the explosion, and decided that he should be well above him for some reason. When Newton is realistically in that same realm,
Yeah,
in my opinion,
absolutely, absolutely. Like there's not a tier gap between him and Byron Murphy. They're both tier one IDL prospects in this class. So
with a fairly steep drop off
yeah,
after.
very. So okay, I like that. And like I said, he just feels like a Texan. You get to reinforce that defensive line. You know, I know it's an edge, but Jonathan Grenard is an impending free agent. You got Will Anderson on the other side. You put Newton in the middle. You're really working with something now for a team that has created playoff expectations for themselves. So good pick up there. Dallas Cowboys are up here at 24. I think they also are pretty intriguing as to where they're going to go.
Ooh, there's a lot of ways they could go.
We're going to click on offensive tackle again because I think this team needs another offensive lineman whose name starts with Ty.
Another freak athlete to replace the old man.
Mm-hmm. I think I want Tyler Guyton here.
I like it.
And I'm sure, like, the Cowboys, like,
if
this was the
is
target.
Tyron a free agent?
He is a free agent.
I feel like he was.
However, I think he's going to be back unless the Chiefs offer him a bag, or like the Bengals offer him a bag, which both of them. And I don't even think the Bengals, like, they're not moving Brown back to right tackle after that whole debacle. So it's either the Chiefs offering him like a top of the tackle market contract, or he's coming back to Dallas. Like, I feel like he would do right by them in that way. You can have Tyler Guyton develop at right tackle. And then you have a lot of flexibility moving forward of, okay, do you want to move Guyton over to left when Tyron Smith retires or does whatever? Do you want to just keep him at right, move Tyron Smith to tackle from guard? And then you've got the flexibility to keep him at tackle right now, Tyron Smith at left tackle, Tyler Smith at guard, Tyler Biotish at center, and then Zach Martin. So,
well, Biotish is a free agent. Are they going to
I just said that because his name's Tyler.
Okay, fair enough.
Tyler Guyton at 24.
Just a bunch of T's.
To Dallas.
I do like that pick, though, because that's the type of move we're used to seeing Dallas make. They didn't really do that last year. They felt like they were grasping at straws to try to make their Super Bowl run and then took Mozzie Smith when I don't think they should have.
And don't get me wrong, Tyler Guyton is not a best player available pick right there. Like, I think there's guys that some teams are definitely going to have over Tyler Guyton that are still available on this board. Guys that are still available, for example, because you can't see this. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Amarius Mims, Troy Fontenelle, Troy Franklin, Graham Barton, Brian Thomas, Ennis Rakestraw, A.D. Mitchell, Keon Coleman. Like, there's a lot of talent left on the board, but that just feels like a Cowboys pick to go get a guy that they can develop into being, and they invest in the trenches. And that's what they've always done. They invest in athletes in the trenches and develop them pretty well, and that's why they've been so successful. Green Bay Packers at 25. What are we thinking?
All right. I have a question for you. Have you slightly been hearing rumblings about a potential move away from Jair Alexander with the Packers because I saw it like a month ago
I have
and I
not.
wasn't sure if it was true.
Now I've seen corner being one of the like if he was still here and I was making this pick, Cooper DeJean's like my slam dunk pick here
Yeah,
because they kind of need every position in the secondary, but they don't like need a guy that can only do that. Cooper DeJean can play safety, he can play slot corner, he can play perimeter corner, and they kind of need all three of those things. But if you take a guy that can only play perimeter corner, you're kind of just like, well, we got two spots that we still need to fill here.
yeah.
So I
I'm
don't know.
also torn between less of like their swing tackle type of situation that they tend to do a lot and potentially take Amarius Mims. They like to build in the trenches, take edges and stuff, but I'm not sold on Braswell. There might be a certain athlete that I'm kind of thinking about that did really well today, but I'm not quite in on him yet.
And
Even though I do like his upside.
I know that that's what they do, but you've still got Gary. You just drafted Lucas Van Ness.
Mm-hmm.
Preston Smith
They're
may
still
or may not still be under contract. I've got no idea.
all right. So,
This is a weird spot for them.
yeah, because their needs are odd too.
Yeah,
Like they're clearly
because
set on
you
receiver,
like
set on tight end, set on quarterback, set on
well
mostly
look.
trenches. I feel like
I don't think they're set at receiver. Like I think this is a
not
very
these guys.
yeah maybe, but and not Green Bay is more like the thing with me.
It's not a
Green Bay.
Move, yeah.
But if you're walking into next year saying, I don't even know how you'd really want to order this. Christian Watson is my wide receiver 1. Dobbs is my 2. Wicks is my
Reed.
3. Jaden or
Reed.
Yeah, Reed's my 3. Wicks is my 4. Like there's
Milton
quantity
is
there.
5 who's had flashes.
There's quantity there for sure.
Yeah.
But
not quite elite, but I don't think we're quite at the elite territory. You got guys who can pop in the right system, but I don't think it's it.
Okay, we'll wait till
you're drafting another Christian Watson here.
Yeah, if I don't know, man. Yeah, I guess Brian Thomas is a little redundant. Franklin's smaller, but still deep speed.
I think I like get open, baby. I like the idea of Mims, giving them more of like a true tackle that they've kind of been missing. Bakhtiari likely on the way out. He sounds like he could be a cap casualty.
Move Zach Tom to left and then keep Mims at right, or do you just put Mims at left immediately?
And then Elgin on the. They still have Jenkins, and he can go inside. I feel like
you move Jenkins inside because Zach Tom's a starting level tackle.
I think he can keep Mims at right and then move Tom. Tom seems like he has the versatility in him to keep going.
Yeah, and then
just give them an actual like true guy that they don't feel like they're just moving around smaller guys that are versatile everywhere. Give one of the guys a defined position.
Yeah, finally. Like. And then he just has injury problems and then got into it.
Oh, good grief. Oh, you can tell Trevor Sikkema is making these needs because there's like 8 things for the Tampa Bay Bucs here.
Yeah, I like as you were talking your way through the Packers pick, I was like kind of like preparing myself for the Bucs, and I was like, oh God, I don't like this.
There could be a lot.
I think so we've done 2 on Instagram. Go check them out, even though they're kind of outdated. I'm pretty sure I picked Braylon Trice both times. And Braylon Trice, coincidentally, has kind of fallen out of the first round entirely. But they're cutting Shaq Barrett.
Mm-hmm. And they need a lot of interior.
Shoyinka hasn't really worked out.
They need edge. They need corner. I mean, he's not wrong. They need a lot of these things that he's put in here.
I think I'm choosing between the Robinsons here. Chop and
Darius. I like Darius.
Or
he's growing on me a lot.
And I know it's been a minute, so we're gonna wake you back up here. Is there a trade option here? Did somebody want to come up and pick their wide receiver before we go on a run of Buffalo Bills, Ravens maybe, Chiefs, Panthers?
Who's close?
Patriots.
Turn a move in. Because you're having to give up a ton for one of these guys if you're not around the turn.
I'm not going super far down. I think like the floor, because there's a lot of options here.
Panthers,
Patriots, I think are also an option. to move up? I know the Panthers don't have a ton of capital to just be moving
I
all
don't.
around willy nilly. If the
I
Chiefs
don't think the
have
Pats move.
if the Chiefs have a guy that they love, and
Mm.
don't want the Bills to get him, I think Brian Thomas is the number one wide receiver on the board here in my mind.
It depends on what you like the most out of a receiver, because it's kind of pick your poison and what you need. Because
Yeah.
him and Franklin are different
Giants
in
and
many
Titans
ways.
have already addressed theirs. We just talked about the Packers. Vikings, no. Falcons, definitely not moving. Might not.
Not this
There's
much.
Yeah. So I think our options: Patriots, Panthers, Chiefs. Bills aren't jumping the Cardinals, so it's those four.
Unless
We'll do
someone
the
wants to move up
if they don't.
from the first.
Yeah, if they don't
Because
pick,
corner's still weird. Some things need it. Eh.
do the Bucks need it?
Corner? It's a
They
little
got
lower
Davis and
priority, I
Dean,
think,
so
but
probably not a first round need.
maybe contingency at receiver since
Do
Evans is getting older.
I just kind of cop out and take Troy Fountain now and say you can put him at 4 different positions on the offensive line?
Emmer Barton.
There's a spot for him. I'm
And
not
Barton,
I'm
same.
not big on Barton. I don't, for whatever reason, he just doesn't do it for me.
It's because he's from Duke. You're a Maryland fan. So you're going Font now?
Yeah, it just feels like such a cop out pick. It just feels like Fontenelle is
It's
like
safe.
the perfect all right, well, I guess we'll take him.
It's safe. I can't blame you.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do here. I don't love it, but whatever. Troy Fontenelle, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Arizona Cardinals, number 27, best player available. Who do you think it is, and why are you taking him here?
Maybe not. Yeah, I'll just go Kool-Aid. They do need corner.
Yeah,
It's pretty easy, unless there's anybody slightly further down that I like more.
or do they? Or
Are they the Robinson team?
that could be it as
They
well.
they are horrendous on the defensive line.
And I know we just talked about it. Or are they the trade down? Again, I don't know if you've got a fit you love, but we've known the Cardinals since they brought in Monty Ossenfort to move up and down the draft to acquire more picks. I think that's in play here, especially, again, this is their second first-round pick. It's the same thing we talked about with Chicago. It's just, is the demand there? And that's kind of the question. We don't know if, the Patriots have Brian Thomas, right behind Rome Odunze as wide receiver 4 or something like that. So that call is kind of hard to make.
I'm going to do Darius Robinson.
Okay.
I like that there because they need someone solid who can kind of play run and pass, because you're not going to Chop. I like Chop. He's athletic. He can jump out of the building. He has a lot of good traits. He's just so inconsistent right now that I would, if they're hoping to compete at all in the next 2 years, it's risky.
He transferred from Maryland. Buffalo Bills, 28. I know the hot pick is wide receiver, but I want to be different for some reason. I don't know. I don't know what I want to do other than that. But I really wish we talked about how all those tackles were. I don't know about all.
Tyler Nubin. They need safeties now. It's not sexy at all.
I guess I will go wide receiver. We were just talking about how there were all these fantastic tackles on the board, and because I've been saying this for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. The Bills' offensive line isn't good, and they never fix it. Ever. They never even make a kind of attempt to fix it. I don't get it.
Which tackle are you going, though? Like Sui Matai. Athletic freak. Go to men. Be taken. Yeah, they need to come up with some long-term solution. They can't keep putting stopgaps on everything.
But
if
Mims made it here immediately, if I probably wouldn't do Fountain now without a thought, or if Guyton made it here, or if Latham somehow made it here, I'd do those without a thought, because you got Deion Dawkins at left. All of those are right tackles. So now I'm back to looking at receiver. So the top 3 are gone. If you were to give me your top 3 of the next 3, how would you order those guys?
you want team fit, in my opinion, or
Just like
like
just as a prospect
actual?
on a big board.
As a prospect, it's pretty close to what they have on here. I do like Franklin slightly more. Thomas, I don't know why, but I get a lot of Gabe Davis vibes, which is weird because this is the team that wants
That's
him.
kind of why I'm
Because
looking at him, to be
most
honest
of
with
it
you.
is big plays. I feel like Keon can be better than what he showed because he turned himself into a pure jump ball guy. But I think it's the routes they had him running rather than a lot of underneath stuff because he can create space
Hmm.
with the ball in his hands. He's just not great at route running. I like his potential. He's just someone you have to kind of keep your eye on and develop. But Thomas is like step in and he can pretty much be Gabe Davis day one in my mind, aside from maybe the blocking because he's a great blocker on the outside, which is what you're looking for in a first round receiver, obviously.
Yeah, and call me crazy. I might take him because of that. Because don't let me get on a run blocking rant here. But you saw the way that they kind of changed their philosophy down the stretch there.
Gabe was integral to that.
I'm taking
I
him,
don't
Brian
I don't know
Thomas,
if Thomas is all right.
because Gabe Davis is gone. You have to take
Yeah, he's
one of
gone.
these guys. I know I said I wanted to be different. Also, PFF a little bit lower on Xavier Worthy. I thought Xavier Worthy was going to be
Yeah,
like a
they are.
mid-round 2 guy. They got him all the way down at 66 on their big board.
He's
Uh,
just so slight
yeah. But
and
all
had
right,
a few drop issues.
Brian Thomas Jr. at 28. Lions up at 29. What are you thinking here? They're a weird team as well.
They still need a lot of pass rush. They're probably going to have to regroup on interior stuff, not Ragnow and stuff like that, but they're probably going to lose Jonah Jackson. Who knows if they bring Chauncey Gardner Johnson back?
That
They
was a
did a lot
one-year
of
deal, wasn't it?
stopgap stuff at corner. A lot of stopgap stuff.
I like
So I'm thinking
Rakestraw to
either
them.
that was who
Come
I
down
was
and play the
thinking of.
run.
Him, or they take the freak and chop. Those were my final two because they
Yeah.
definitely need a rotation because it was just Hutchinson this year because
Mm-hmm.
Houston got hurt early and they were not productive outside of Hutchinson. I like Rakestraw. He kind of fits their mentality. He's a
Yeah.
little tougher built.
Mm.
Kool-Aid doesn't quite give me the same Dan Campbell spirit.
Yeah, and we talked about this a
So I'm
little
going
bit.
Rakestraw.
I like Rakestraw, and I think like Detroit at 29 is like a really good fit for him. I just have a weird gut feeling that he's gonna have a weird process, and he might be one of those guys that we're talking about at like pick 48. And we're like, how is he still here? But he just keeps falling.
Yeah.
Because
I
he
like him there though.
had some injury problems early on in his college career. I think he had at least one, if not two, season-ending injuries. But I still think this is a good fit, and I still think that like this isn't a bad pick by any means.
Mm.
I would say it's a good. And it's Rake Straw, 29 to the Lions. Number 30, the Baltimore Ravens. Another team that like when I've done like mock draft stuff in the past, don't know what to do with the Ravens because they've like everybody's like, oh, well, we need to go get a receiver for X year in a row. I
Well,
think
they're probably going to be slight on the defensive line.
going to be slight on the defensive line. I don't know. I think I saw that they are going to tag Matabike if they can't get a long-term deal done. So that's there.
But
You still got
then you
Owe.
have Jadavion and you have Kyle Van Noy, who you'd
Mm-hmm.
have to work out. They can't keep doing 1 year stopgaps. They got to find somebody
Mm-hmm.
for longer
And you
term.
were hoping that was going to be Ojabo, but he hasn't really turned into
Not
that.
yet.
No. Excuse me. And then two sneaky things, like don't be surprised, and I know that kind of the cuts are coming right around now, but I got a weird gut feeling that one of Marlon Humphrey or Ronnie Stanley is not going to be a Raven next year.
I can see that.
They've both got pretty sizable cap numbers. They're both getting up there in age, especially respective to their position, and they both kind of had down years last year. Ronnie Stanley has really not looked the same coming back from his injury. Marlon Humphrey, I think, is just kind of getting up there in age. And they've got to worry about the financial implications of all of their moves now. You know, you look at corner and they put together some good coverage unit with the likes of Brandon Stevens and Arthur Millette and these guys that are not really that good. And then at tackle, you've
That's
got
serviceable.
Stanley, who's 30, which blows my mind, and Morgan Moses. So I think there's a lot of directions that the Ravens can go here.
It's a sneaky amount of things they could take, and it's like, yeah, that works.
Yeah, especially for a team that I'd say for the entire
the
regular
1 seed.
season was the best team in the league. So I'm looking at Kool-Aid. Graham Barton, no, because he's probably projects more of a center, be at worst a guard.
Yeah,
definitely not a tackle.
I don't think he's their pick.
No, I don't. I'm gonna rule out all the receivers.
Franklin
Chop is local to the area, but
yes,
kind of redundant with Ajabo.
Adiza Isaac, get another Penn State guy maybe. Kamari Lassiter, if you're not feeling Kool-Aid. I like Lassiter. He can play pretty sticky when he needs to. I just don't think he'll test amazing, which is kind of their.
I'm going to ask you how this guy did today. Chris Jenkins do today. I didn't get a chance to. I looked. I glanced over everything.
So he ran 4.91 and 40. 10-yard split was 1.7. Vertical was 30 inches. Not great, but he's a big boy. Broad was a lot better. He was 9'7" in that. Didn't do 3-cone, didn't do shuttle, didn't do bench. Yeah.
You still think it's too early for Chris Jenkins? Because they do like.
It's not horribly early. They like their interior guys.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the most outlandish thing I've seen.
I don't know. I hate this.
Rook might move up a little more after what he did today, but I don't think it's first round caliber.
Yeah. Huh. Jeez. This is fantastic podcasting, by the way. I'm sure.
I'm thinking one of those here. One of those guys like Chop and Kamari feel like the best to me.
I'm gonna go Kamari.
I like Kamari.
For whatever reason, I think I did Chop already, and that's why I'm not as high on doing that again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kamari Lassiter.
I like that.
Which puts you on the clock with your final selection. Well, we'll work together on the Panthers. We'll do the Panthers. We're not doing the Browns.
We'll give them a pick.
We'll do the Panthers. 49ers at 31.
So they need anything on offensive line that's not Trent Williams, correct. And they need corner. They probably could use.
I don't even think they it's listed here. I don't really think they need corner. Maybe not a first round.
I'm not sold on it now. They need depth.
Yeah, because Travarius Ward was good, very good. They've made some investments into it recently. It's never been a fantastic group, but with that front seven, you don't need it to be.
Torn between Graham Barton and Zach Frazier. Do they want a guy that's locked in at center, or do they want a guy with versatility?
I think they would want versatility, just obviously, as does most teams, because if they have a problem at guard or whatever, they can move Barton if they have a week where what's his name? Right tackle.
Oh, McKivitz.
Yeah.
Connor McKivitz stinks.
If he's down, slide Barton out. So I would go Graham Barton here. Before we move on, and I know we're about to close up here, what do you think they're going to do with Ayuk? Because he's going to get more money.
They should kind of.
Just on inflation.
I'm kind of thinking, yeah, he's going to get paid a ton. I'm leaning towards they should do the strategy with Buckner where they try to get a first out of him. Because right before, it'd be worth it. He's not going to be worth the money they give him. Even though he's a great receiver, he can get open. He runs great routes.
Trade him to the Colts, dude.
That turns this into kind of like a Troy Franklin conversation, if that's the case. If that's the case. Or Ladd, because I feel like Ladd would go out of his way to block and help.
I was about to say, let's not alter the whole strategy based on this thought. Because it's not
I'm going to still go my O-line pick, though.
Okay, so we're still rolling with Barton. I'm not going to actually make the final selection, so that
hey,
we can still
who said
see
that?
Still see
No, I
the
was gonna take Barton regardless, and I just wanted to bring up Frazier because there's been a lot of whispers of him sneaking into the end of the first year.
yeah, I've seen that too. All right, Chiefs at 32. This I took Brian Thomas already, right?
Yes, yes, you
He's
did.
gone.
That would have been a good spot for him.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna go Troy Franklin here. Feels
I
like
I don't know why, but I really like Keon in that offense.
really, but
I
they've
don't know
never. I
why.
mean, they haven't
It's
had
this.
that archetype in a few years. The last time
They
they
had
did
it.
was what? Sammy Watkins.
Well, my archetype thought is that he's like Rasheed Rice, where he was an unnecessary amount of jump balls, and then they find a way to get him in space and
Keep him on the
create.
floor. Keep him on the ground.
Yeah, because the offensive line's still going to be a little rough. They're not
But
going to have as much downfield development as they'd want.
and also, I don't think that they're only taking wide receivers. Like everybody thinks that they're just going to take wide receiver and that's it. I don't think that that's the case. But the way the board's fallen, you still have a lot of good wide receiver options available, and like your non-wide receiver options, Braswell, Jordan Morgan, TJ Tampa.
They'd
Not
need
like
interior help if they could get it, but there's like
yeah.
nothing here.
But the thing
It
is,
just stinks.
they cut MVS yesterday, 2 days ago, whenever. Um, so they don't really have a field stretcher at wide receiver anymore. Franklin could be that. Rasheed Rice kind of working underneath. You've still got Kelsey there as well. But that's I'm not saying he's gonna be Tyreek Hill. Not saying he's gonna be Tyreek Hill. But
Not quite.
their offense was the most successful when they had one really fast guy up there and Travis Kelsey here. So maybe Troy Franklin could be that. Don't think he's gonna be ultra productive though. Like we're gonna turn this into a fantasy conversation with 5 minutes left in the video. Don't think he's like if you're like, oh, he just got drafted the Chiefs, we got to go get like for dynasty drafts and stuff. Like, I'm not putting him over Odunze. I'm not putting him over Neighbors or anything like that just because he got drafted the Chiefs. Like, how many receivers have been ultra productive outside of Rasheed Rice this year? Who is still there? I don't know. Taking Troy Franklin though, and I did exactly what I said I wasn't going to do. Actually, select him. That way I can.
I still have the board up
available because you're smart. Panthers are on the clock here at 33. I'm sorry, Browns fans, but not a big fan of
We're
you
not
guys,
going that far down.
and I'm not going that far down. Panthers are easy because they're right here, and the board pretty much stays the same. I'll give you my vote. It's Lad McConkey.
Oh, we're on the same page. That was who I was thinking. I love Lad to them. It's either that or they're the team that takes Chop. Because they're going to need to start rebuilding. Because I don't know what's going on with Brian Burns. I don't have no idea if they're going to keep him or not.
Who is like, and I know this is a mock draft. Where do you think, like, what are some landing spots for Burns if he does hit free agency? I'll tell you one that I think is fun. Houston. If they really want to go nuts.
You got him and Anderson. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. And if they get Johnny Newton,
they've got the money too. But yeah, the Panthers, not quietly, because they were the worst team in football last year, need everything. They need wide receiver. They need offensive. The offensive line, I think, will get better just based on variance of offensive line play, and not having Frank Reich be in charge of anything. But defensively, like Jeremy Chinn's gone. He was a good player for them, just didn't really find a spot in this system. J.C. Horn.
They're going to have to pay Derek Brown
having injury problems. They got to pay Derek Brown. They've decided they're not going to pay Brian Burns after being offered 2 first-round picks last year. They're going to let him walk for nothing.
Idiots.
I've said this before, if you aren't going to accept a 2 first-round picks offer for an edge rusher that is a fringe top 10 guy, you pay him immediately after you hang up the phone. So this doesn't happen. Sorry, Panthers fans.
They butchered that process entirely, but they were fighting for their own jobs at GM at that point. Scott Fitterer was fighting for his life at that point, so he's not taking that. He's trying to compete.
Yeah, because he's probably wasn't going to make those picks anyway. Official selection is Lad McConkey, though. Analysis quickly on that. They need players that can get open and then catch the football. And they didn't really have that last year. Lad McConkey can do that.
They had Thielen, but this is an immediate Thielen replacement.
Yeah,
and younger.
Literally. Well, let me recap everything. I didn't do a really good job of recapping um, everything during the podcast, and since we don't have a visual part of this, I apologize for that if you've made it this far. So to recap everything, the Bears went Caleb Williams at number 1. The Commanders took Jaden Daniels at number 2. The Raiders trade up to number 3 to get Drake May. Cardinals take Marvin Harrison at 4. The Vikings traded up with the Chargers at 5 to get J.J. McCarthy. Giants took Malik Neighbors at 6. Titans took Rome Odunze at 7. Jets move up to 8 to get Joe Alt. Bears take Olu Fashanu at 9. Falcons take Jared Verse at 10. The Chargers take Brock Bowers at 11. Broncos took Bo Nix at 12. The Patriots took Talize Fuaga at 13. Saints took Dallas Turner at 14. The Colts took Quinyon Mitchell at 15. Jackson Powers Johnson at 16 to the Seahawks. Cooper DeJean at 17 to the Jags. Oh, this is really long. Byron Murphy
I can
to the
pick it up.
Bengals at 18. No, okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You got it.
So at the Bengals pick at 18, they take Byron Murphy the second, not to be confused with the corner. And then at 19, the LA Rams take low moving cost Laiatu Latu. The Pittsburgh Steelers, Jaden's very own team, take Terrion Arnold to go opposite of JPJ. The Miami Dolphins take Nate Wiggins to try to play opposite of Jalen Ramsey and make a contingency plan at corner. Another contingency plan at 22 for the Eagles. They avoid corner, probably going that round 2 instead, and take J.C. Latham. The Texans bulk up their defensive line at 23 with Johnny Newton. 24, another contingency plan for the Cowboys with Tyler Guyton here, trying to fill in the role of Tyron Smith eventually, if not this year. 25, the Packers take tackle Amarius Mims. At 26, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers not able to find a trading partner and take the flexible Troy Fontenot. 27, Cardinals, same issue that the Bucs had. They will take Darius Robinson, edge from Missouri. 28, the Buffalo Bills find their immediate replacement for Gabe Davis and a long, lanky, fast receiver in Brian Thomas Jr. 29, the Lions take Ennis Rakeshaw Jr., cornerback out of Mizzou. 30, the Ravens take cornerback Kamari Laster from Georgia. 31, the 49ers take a definitely necessary and flexible Graham Barton on the offensive line. Final pick of the first round, the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champions, back-to-back years, take Troy Franklin, receiver out of Oregon. And then just for shits and gigs, we got the Carolina Panthers at 33, taking anything they need, and that anything is Ladd McConkey, receiver out of Georgia, to save the franchise.
Fantastic. You even elaborate a little bit. I was just getting the names out.
Rolling.
All right. Just under an hour and 45. I'm fine with that.
It's a mock draft. They're going to be
long. It's a mock draft. You guys liked it, right? If you didn't, though, comment. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at BlitzPod. Be sure to, give a 5-star rating on the podcast if you're on YouTube. Like the video. That's the word. Subscribe. Tell your friends. We're really good. We talk and we do fun stuff. Just I'm really running out of things to talk about here.
Steam here.
Yeah. So do all the things that I just said. We appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you in the next one.